Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. If you're not and you're already a member, you obviously recognise this from a previous video. If you are new to the channel or you've not seen this video before or the previous video before, this is regarding the SimJack new sequential shifter. You might want to do a check out of the video beforehand if you are new and you've not seen the previous video where I did a teardown, showed a couple of problems on the build of the actual shifter. One of them being the issue with the bearing. You might be interested to know that somebody has actually contacted me who's also ordered one of these and has found a similar issue. So they were also missing these plastic bushes and also found that their bearing was not seated properly. So there seems to be a build issue with these shifters from SimJack, so if anybody from SimJack is watching, take note of that. Build quality needs to be looked at. I do appreciate it's only a small company or a relatively new company, but yeah, something you guys need to get in check. So the reason we're doing this video is because another issue has developed with the shifter. I've been using this now for around about a week. Well, actually no, that's not true. About a week and a half, 2 weeks, on and off. The problem that has developed is nothing to do with the bearings this time, it's to do with the shaft. So, I don't know whether you can see that in there. Oh, let me come a bit closer. So, in there, I'm just going to move it just so you can see in a bit of context. Normally speaking, in there, you would have fitted a Narlock nut, nothing particularly special. And if you can see, I'm going to move it up now, I'll try and get the light on it. In there is a locking nut just above that plate that's in there. So when this is down, the idea is they clamp together and then this top nut locks down onto this top plate. The issue is that there's been no problem with the Narlock nut, because obviously it's a Narlock, so once it's on it doesn't come off. The issue is with the top nut, the one that's in here just above this bottom plate. That is not a Narlock nut. So again, if anybody's watching from SimJack, you need to change that and put a Narlock on. There's no point in scrimping and saving on the cost of a Narlock nut and just putting a normal nut on, so that people like me, when we buy these, end up having to strip the entire things down to fix the problem. So ultimately what's happened is that when I got it was perfectly fine, it was completely tight. But you can imagine now, while I've been using this, I've been constantly pushing forward and pulling back on it. And though you might think that you are just pushing forward and pulling back perfectly straight, you never actually do that. In reality, when you're pushing with your hand and you're gripping this, you are creating this effect. So even when you're pulling back, you'll end up doing this. And when you're pushing forward, you will naturally just do this, roll it. Now what that means is, bit by bit, this shaft is constantly doing this under pressure, a tiny amount, and what that is enough to cause this top nut to work its way loose. And once it goes very, very quickly. So I had no issue for about a week and 2 days, and suddenly noticed a little bit of play, and then within, I don't know, an hour to 2 hours of then continued use, it just got progressively worse and worse, to the point that it was sloppy. So in the meantime, I've actually removed this Narlock nut, just so that you guys, for the purpose of the video, can get some context of how that's set up in there. I am actually going to strip this down because there's no way I can actually tighten these things. Well, theoretically I could, but it'd make a useless video and doesn't really help you much. But ultimately I have to strip this down now to get this off this centre shaft, so I can get access underneath to put the Narlock nut on. And similarly, because I can't get in there to tighten that nut, I've got to take these off. So for all intents and purposes, I now have to strip this entire thing down just to fix that one problem. Now, it doesn't personally bother me, it's just a little bit annoying. For some people who are not mechanically minded, this is going to do your head in. Especially bearing in mind I've had this running for, what, 2 weeks. So if you were thinking of buying one of these, there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually performed very well as a shifter. There was some comments on my video about it potentially mis-shifting when people were watching the videos. It hasn't mis-shifted. Just to be clear, it actually functions perfectly well. One of the problems is regarding the mis-shift issue is that this relies on its sort of zero position and then forward for downshift, for example, or full back for upshift. if when you're downshifting and you pop through 2-3 gears, for example, from third to first or something like that, and you do it rapidly, yeah, like this, but you don't allow this to fully zero because it's a Hall effect sensor, then it doesn't register. So what you have to do is, if you're downshifting or rapidly upshifting, whichever way, you have to do the full engagement and then fully let it release back to zero before you do the next engagement. You can't sort of do this, it doesn't register. So then you only get one shift down instead of two. So that was the shift issue. So when I've made sure when I'm using this I fully allow it to come back to zero before a downshift or upshift, then it's absolutely fine. But for now we're going to deal with this shaft issue. Now I don't have, the remedy by the way is get yourself a second nylock nut. So you're going to replace this nut in there, that one in there, with another nylock nut, and that will instantly remedy the problem. And nylocks, generally speaking, for this sort of application, they won't come undone. I don't have a nylock nut handy, so the way I'm going to do it is I've got a flanged nut. Then you can see that flange nuts have sort of serrations on the bottom of them, and I should be using some thread lock. Now, in order to strip this down, you're going to have to release the spring tension off this spring. Yeah, you can't access this side easily, you just can't get to it very easily. So the way to do it is you have to release this pressure off this. In order to do that, because these actually, they're really quite tight, you're going to get yourself a little bit of aluminium tube or steel tube and just slide that on like so. And what that enables you to do then is put the force onto it like that without actually hurting your fingers, otherwise it's absolutely crippling on the inside of your fingers. So now that enables me to take that off. By the way, I've pre-slackened these just to make it a little bit easier on the video. So in actual fact, that, though to be fair, I've forgotten to undo that one. Brilliant. There we go. So I'll undo that one. Make sure you do what I've done with the spring. If you try and undo this, it'll be really tight on the bolts as you undo it, and it will end up just flying out on you, and you'll probably end up losing it. So in theory that should be free to come out. So there's the boss. Now you can release that spring tension, and now it's free. So it's completely free. So at that point now, the centre shaft can slide out. We'll take these bearings out. So there's your two bearings. Oh, there you are, there's the other one. That's just a shaft that slides in between them, so we'll put those back in later. So now I can at least get access to this nut, but as you can see I can't get in here, so now I've got to take this one off. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not the end of the world, and I would genuinely advise anybody buying this shifter, because of the other issues, like I've pointed out, other people have had this bearing issue, just take it apart when you first get it. Just literally as a matter of course, take it apart and do these changes, and then in theory this should be fine. And like I say, I've had no issues with it other than what I'm pointing out now. Other than that, it's actually been quite good, and it feels like a reasonable shifter. So I can't complain as it's from its functionality point of view. What I can complain about is the build quality from the factory. And annoyingly, it's not something major. So there you can see it. It's nothing major. So what's annoying about it really is that this shouldn't have happened in the first place. There should have been an nylock there in the first place to start with. So to get that out, obviously I'm going to have to just pinch that nut, wind that shaft out. Not the most exciting of videos, I appreciate, guys, but this is just for people who want to do this, so you know what's going on. Take my nut out. Now the way I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to put the nut in, put the shaft back through, put the nylock on, and then back this nut up so I can then put some thread lock on the thread and then wind the nut down. It will be a bit fiddly, so at some point I'll come offline on the video just to actually finish tightening that nut up. So ultimately that's going to go in like so. I'll then take my shaft. Make sure when you're doing all this, by the way, that this nut is just wound up to the top just to keep it out of the way. So pinch that nut into place. And then we just need enough shaft for the Nylock to go on, and that should be enough there. The trouble is, this is greasy, so I've got greasy paws now. Right, there we go. Now, one problem you will find is you want to be able to tighten this down, and obviously there's no flats on this. So if you don't know how to do that, take your nut that you've just now taken off. Oh dear, is that the wrong size? Yep, that's an M10, not an M8. Get yourself a nut that fits the top. I don't actually have one, I don't think. Let me just check. No, I haven't got one. That's how you'll do it ultimately. You'll tighten a nut down there. Annoyingly, like I say, I don't have one handy. Once that's tightened down, that gives you something for your spanner to give purchase to, but yeah, so you'll have to give me 2 minutes while I just tighten this up. Okay, because I haven't got a nut handy, one thing you can do is you can put your handle back on. That'll give you enough leverage then to tighten that Nylock up. You're only looking to tighten the Nylock till the end of the shaft is flush with the end of the nut. You're not looking for any more. So that will do. So nothing more than that. You don't need any more than that. And as you can see now, I have a tiny little gap, so I'm going to wind that nut back up to the top. So that's as high as that can go in theory. Yep. And all I'm going to do is a little bit of, let me just put this down for a second. I'm just going to put a bit of thread lock on there. Like I say, you don't have to use thread lock. If you're using a Nylock, you don't need thread lock. And that comes out. Yeah, that'll be enough. And then wind your nut back down. Now, as you can tell, you can't really get a spanner in there. I have got a spanner handy, so we will try it just on the off chance. Yeah, so you can't get a spanner in. So if you use a screwdriver and wedge it down against the flats, then you can tighten that into it like so. To get that released, he says. There we go. Still not tightened up. Right, there we go. Does help if I actually tighten the right way, to be honest. Duh. So there we go. That will do. Now once that thread lock's gone off, that'll be locked in tight then, so obviously there's no slop. And then when you've done that, just adjust this top nut down. You can get your spanner on this, thankfully. It's not exactly great access, but you can just get it on. So we can get that a little bit nipped up a bit better, to be honest. That's one thing I will criticise about the design. It's like, for example, that plate could have been a little bit lower. That cutout could have been a bit lower. I'll have a little bit of a cutout there so that I can get a spanner in to tighten things up rather than making it ridiculously difficult. But you know, it is what it is, so you've just got to live with it. Just double check that, and there we go, that's your problem fixed. So now we've got to put the bugger back together. So next thing, I'll slide my spring over my shaft ready and put my bearing in. These are quite a snug fit, by the way. If when you're doing this you ever take this one out, or you've got your bearing, well, let's say you bought one and this bearing is actually on the piss and it's not seated properly, just get yourself a little Allen key and shove it in the thread hole on here, and you can get enough leverage against the spring then to move this, and then you can pop your bearing in. Otherwise it's bloody difficult. So let's get this right. Actually, talking out of my arse, that needs to go in there first, and I can slide that through. It will be a bit of a fiddle to put it back together. There we go, that's through there. And then next thing, because there's no tension, I'll be able to get this bearing in comfortably. There we go. Now that shaft will slide until we put the bosses back in, because it will be under tension. There'll be no tension, sorry, until we put these back in. So again, this is going to be a bit of a fiddle. Probably best line it on its side for this. So small bolts, large bolts, so you don't get mixed up. Right, that's that one down. Now incidentally, I can see, by the way, why from a factory point of view these bearings are always out. So like the other person who's messaged me saying they had the same issue, I can see why. I lost my bolt then. I'll tell you what, let's just get that in and I'll explain why. So the reason being is because there's a lot of tension in this spring. You don't realise it's really quite a lot of tension it's under. So at the moment that's fine, but you can see that at any point this can just easily slide out, and there you go. It's all just falling apart on me without any effort. So the trouble is, this bit here is the last piece you put in. This last little crossbar, this one. So in the meantime, while you're doing this, it doesn't take much for these bearings to slip out of this main housing, and the shaft to move, and all this sort of garbage. And I can well understand why, when they're assembling this, the operators are cocking it up. I'm not saying it's easily remedied from a shop floor point of view, but there we go. So we need to use this little gizmo again. You just got to be mindful you can't slide it too far down, otherwise you won't have enough room to get the shaft in, and it will. I'll guarantee it's going to be a bit of a fight. So you can see, if I'm too far down, it's really hard to do this. I'm going to try and adjust that up. There we go. I should just have enough room to get that shaft in now. No, it's still not enough. I will warn you, this is a right fiddle. Let's try doing it like that. I have to squeeze my squeaky bench. Once you've got one bolt in, it'll be absolutely fine. Let's try and line that up with the Allen key a little bit. Use my Birmingham screwdriver. Bet loads of you've never even heard that expression, have you? Birmingham screwdriver. If you don't know what a Birmingham screwdriver is, it's a hammer. No, see, this is such a nightmare job. This is what I mean. This is why I can understand why, on a factory point of view. There, here, in fact, I've just had to push the bearing back in. So this is exactly why they're having this problem on the shop floor. One more time. There we go. That should just be enough. I say that, easier said than done. So now this doesn't like. There we go. Is that enough? I can get my bolt in. No, still not enough. I'm wondering if there's a bias on the way the spring goes in actually. Let's have a look. I'm actually going to try the spring the other way around. No, there shouldn't be a difference. We'll try it that way around just in case. But yeah, so this is why Simjack are having a problem on their shop floor. No questions. You know, the concept of the design is fine, but the construction in terms of being able to put it together is just it's shit. So I can't even be angry at the operators for fighting with this, because the engineers who designed this should have thought this through better. You can see what sort of fight I'm having with this. There you go. So you can see that no matter how hard I'm pulling on that, there you go, I've got to get it right down to there. Okay. So you can probably hear by my voice, this is not an easy job. tell me I've got enough room to get a bolt in there. No, it's still not enough. Oh, you bugger. What an absolute bloody nightmare this is. Right, so I've got my Allen key wedged in there at the moment. What I'm going to try and do, I'm trying to use a different size Allen key. Put that one through there. Right, there we go. No, it's still not enough. You can see what I mean about it being an absolute pig of a job. If you need to relax, just shove your Allen key through there. What an absolute shit of a job. Right, there we go. Right, okay. See what I mean? Absolute pig. Absolute pig of a job. Now I've got in one bolt in there. I can just get that nipped up enough it's safe. In theory, this side should now line up. There we go. Now you can see why you need this little bit of tube. Obviously just holding it on my thumb just for that short period was absolutely excruciating. Right, so that's safe, he says with an air of confidence. Right, nip that one up. So here's my example, look, there you go. This is exactly why if you buy one of these bearings, you'll receive it like that. So take note, Simjack, if you're watching this, you need to sort this out because your production are having a problem because of the way you've designed this. Its functionality is great, but the way you've designed it means the operators have a pity. Look at that, how long did that take me to get that in? Now right, yes, I'm sure you've got a little jig at your factory, but if I'm struggling like this and I know what I'm doing, and I guarantee one of your operators is going to struggle the same, so sort it out, honestly, that's ridiculous. So, point in fact, you can see now that this is dislodged, and I need to get that back in, so you need to pull with your Allen key like so, and now she's in. Give those a press in. Now she's good to go. What a shit of a job that was. Anyway, that's how you fix it. So I'm going to leave this for a good 12 hours for that Loctite to fully cure and harden before I reassemble it. Incidentally, I've not taken it off my jig. I left it bolted down to my jig and I just undid the side panels and lifted the mechanism out rather than having to get underneath and undo the screws that hold it down to my jig because it's just a pain in the arse. So yeah, you're going to have to do that, guys, otherwise this is going to come loose. I'm not really going to dwell on the video any more than that, really, but you can see what a pig of a job it is. Take note, try and get yourself a bit of tube. That's the only diameter I had under. You can get yourself a smaller diameter than that. And that's about it, really. So I'll leave it there. Obviously I'm going to get this assembled and back onto the rig and working, but that's your quick fix. Okay guys, right, cheers, thanks, bye.